I thank the chairman. As I mentioned in my opening statement, we, out of this committee, passed a FEMA reform. After Katrina, we found that people were making applications out of prisons, that cemeteries were being used for addresses to receive payment assistance, on and on and on. And I'm curious as to the progress we've made since then in terms of taking out the waste, fraud, and abuse from the system. But I also want to make a comparison between Katrina and Hurricane Ike. There appears to be a large disparity in the amount of payments. Now, granted, I think Katrina was a larger scale type hurricane. There were a lot of differences between the two hurricanes. But I just wanted to throw out a few figures. For instance, under housing assistance, there were 506,000 applicants under Ike, and under Katrina there were 939,000 applicants. In Ike, only 17% of the applicants received assistance, and under Katrina, 74% received assistance. That's a fairly wide disparity when you talk about 17% were actually granted versus 74 in Katrina. Other needs assistance. Total of 65,000 applicants were approved under Ike and about 265,000 under Katrina. The average payment, when you compare Katrina to Ike, Katrina was about $5,600, Ike was about $1,700. So there's about a 3 times variable there between assistance granted in Katrina and Ike. And then finally, total assistance, the average payment per registrant under Ike came at a total of $722 versus Katrina, which came at a number of almost $5,000. So $5,000 versus $722. There seems to be a big discrepancy. I've asked the GAO to look at these numbers, explain why this disparity, and I know there are probably reasons for it and answers, but I've asked the GAO to do a study, and Mr. Chairman, I intend to send a letter to you asking for a hearing on this issue so we can find out, number one, lessons learned from Katrina. Maybe we're doing, these controls are in place and the taxpayers saving money. Maybe there's a good story here. But I also would like to know, being from Texas and having my constituents hit by Hurricane Ike, I'd also like to get the answer to why such a big disparity.
The short answer is I'd have to look into it. What I would recommend if we're asking for this review is, one of the things I'd like to know, what I would ask is, given the payouts, what kind of damage were occurring per household? Were we seeing the household was destroyed or household damage, and what that percentage was? The other thing is the bias in our controls now, filtering out people that would otherwise be eligible. It's always the balancing act. The more accountability, more checks and balances, the more people that are outliers who don't fit the definition perfectly but are eligible will fall out. And we saw this in our 04 hurricane season. We had to devote tremendous staff time just to work with people so that the automatic systems that we kicked them out, but they were still eligible, we'd have to go back and work casework on each one of those to make sure. Our goal is that if it's a need, it's based upon the eligibility and it's warranted, that we should award that as effectively as possible. We should do everything we can to monitor and control fraud, but it's a balancing act. And so it would be, to me, interesting to look at what was the household damages percentage-wise. That would reflect payment. But also, are the controls we're putting into control fraud unnecessarily also now penalizing people? And how do we strike the proper balance between speed and effectiveness, but not having the runaway or the situation where there are a lack of fiduciary controls on who is getting assistance, who's not warranted, and that actually takes away from the people that are most vulnerable.
I agree. There's a balance that you need to strike, and I think right after hurricanes hit, as they have in our state, we advocate on behalf of our constituents to make sure they get the assistance they need, and sometimes we don't think that comes fast enough. I know the chairman mentioned the idea that people are still in these rental assistance properties in New Orleans. I don't know what the status of the trailers are, but at some point this needs to be we need to move on and close the chapter. But I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, and interested in what the GAO has to say about this as well. And Mr. Chairman, I do hope that we could have a hearing on this issue. And with that, I yield back.